Hello, and welcome to the platformer tutorial for ChromeEngine. In this tutorial, we're going to be making this simple platformer. It's going to have a start, 5 intermediate platforms, and an end. We'll have 2 spikes and an enemy, which can kill the player, and I'll have 2 moving platforms. So, to begin, just click this link to get a blank project that you can remix to be able to start with ChromeEngine. So click remix here, and then you'll get this. To make things a little bit less laggy and easier for the tutorial, I've already loaded it up into Turbo Warp. So we can close that. Now, if you see here, there's lots of sprites in ChromeEngine, but only 4 of them you really care about. So there's settings where you can customize the engine, setup where you can build the scene for your game, logic where you can make things move and interactable, and GUI where you can add overlays. So let's open up setup. Inside setup, you'll see setup scene objects, and that's where all your code's going to go. By default, you get this block GameObjects.createPlayer, which creates a player 1 unit above the origin on the y-axis, and it's going to have a fixed shadow, which is helpful for platformers. If we start the game now, let's see, we just have this sphere. That's going to be the player. And if you wanted to go into edit mode, this is very important, you can click this little square here, and now we can fly around the scene. We also have a settings button, but you don't have to worry about this. So let's go ahead and make the scene. So we have 7 platforms, and they're cuboids. So I want to introduce you to GameObjects.createCuboid, and I'm using Scratch add-ons, which lets me have this search bar, but if you don't, you can just click My Blocks and then scroll down to Create Cuboid, which is here. So then there's Scale, Position, Rotation. Scale is going to be the dimensions of the cuboid, and then position is where it is, and rotation, that's self-explanatory. Material, don't worry about for now, but we'll get to that. And a name, that's super important. That's for when we start moving things, we need a name to refer back to that game object. So let's make the start platform. So we'll call this start. We'll give it a scale of 2, 2 on the Z and the X-axis, where the Z-axis is this way, and then the X-axis is going to be this way, and we'll make it quite thin, so 0.2. We position it at 0, 0, 0, no rotation, no material, put that in, and there we go. We can once again go to edit mode and see it. The shadow is a little bit, it's kind of intersecting, but I quite like this to start at 0, 0, so what I can do is actually just move the ground down instead. Move it to -1, and that gives us also some space to fall. So there we go, nice. Let's make all the other platforms. So how do we do that? Duplicate this one, duplicate it again, and again. We want 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we need another. And then we'll name them. So platform 2, since this one is platform 1, and platform 3, platform 4, platform 5, platform 6, and we'll call the last one end. And then let's position these. We'll start with -23, so that means this one is 23 units over there on the Z-axis, and then we'll kind of just interpolate between those. So -2.5, -5.2, and -9.2. I'm not trying to make them all the same distance between each other, just kind of roughly. -20 seems good. Start that. Nice. Now let's make them have a bit of kind of height. So we can do that with the Y coordinate. We'll start off with the end one being at 5.2. Let's make the one before it also 5.2. Platform 5, let's make it a little higher, 5.6. Then Then back to 5.2 for platform 4, which is this one. Now let's make these kind of in between the start, which is 0 and 5.2. So we'll put first one at 1.4. It needs to be higher, kind of low enough that we can jump on it. And then this one is between 1.4 and 5.2, so let's say 3.6. Looking better. Jump on it, it's nice. Let's move this one and this one to the right, so it's not all on the line. Let's kind of do that with move this one far to the right, 1.2, and then kind of in between that, 0.6. Looking good, looking good. And if I go to this, you can see it. Nice. Now let's kind of scale them. So at the moment they're all the same kind of square scale, but that's really boring. So let's see. So we'll make the next one kind of just a bit smaller, I guess. Make this one also a bit smaller, but just maybe even smaller so that we have a little bit of challenge to jump on it. For this one, it's going to have the spikes, so it needs to be thin on the x-axis so that the player can't walk around the spikes. It also needs to be a little bit more elongated. So we can do that by making it 0.5 on the x-axis and then 3 on the z-axis. Let's make that. Next one is the spinning platform. It's also pretty long, so let's see, 6.4 and then 1.3 for the x, so it's thinner than the starting one, but not as thin as this one, because, well, we still need the player to be able to jump on it, and we don't want to make it too hard. For this next one, we need a bit of room to be able to get around the enemy. 2.4 and 3.4, so quite a bit bigger than the starting platform. And finally, for our end platform, let's make it just slightly smaller than the start platform. Alright. There you go. There you go. So we've got our platforms. The next part, let's make the spikes, the enemy, and the flag. So the spikes we're going to do with a block called GameObjects.create cone. You might be thinking, cone? A cone is not a spike, but it can be if we just put in 4 for the number size. Now it's a square-based pyramid. Put the radius to be 0.2, the height to be 0.3, so it's kind of similar in size to the player. So where are we going to position it? Well, it's on platform 4, slightly up so it doesn't intersect, and then one of them is to the left in the z-axis, one of them is to the right. So let's find platform 4 here, and we'll just copy this, 5.2, and then negative 9.20. Let's make it slightly higher so it doesn't intersect, and then let's move it 0.6 in either direction. So 0.6 is 8.6, and then in the other direction from 9.2, that's going to be negative 9.8. Cool, move them on. Oh, of course, we need to name them. Spike 1, Spike 2, move them on. Let's see. Nice, we have some spikes. So next, let's make the enemy. And the enemy, we're also going to give it a little eye. So we do that like this. We'll just create a cuboid. Specifically, we're going to create it on platform 6. Let's just copy that. So it's on platform 6, but I think it should be a little bit higher. The scale is definitely not that, so it's going to be 0.4, 0.4, 0.4, which is a little bit bigger than the player, and it's a cube. And the name is enemy. Now, for the eye, we can do that with just a singular pen dot, and we do that with GameObjects.create 3D point. Nice. So this 3D point has one nice property, which is whilst it has the same kind of things as all the others, radius is going to be the radius of that circle, but it also has this parent property. If we put that as enemy, then for this block in particular, when we put in position, we can set it as an offset of the main one. So we can just put in 0, 0, and then set it that we want it negative 0.3 to kind of just offset a little bit on the z-axis, slightly more that direction. We'll name it I, then a radius 0.2 seems good, and later we're going to put in a material so we can give it a image, but for now if we don't put in anything, it will just be a pen dot. Start that, and there we go, there's our enemy. So now we can do the flag. We do that with game objects, so all of these start with game objects, dot create, and then we want a flag, so we can do that with try quad, create try quad, and that takes 3 or 4 points. If we give it 3, then it will be a triangle. We put 4, then it will be a quad. It can also take a parent like that one, material and a name. Before we do that, let's create the this kind of cylinder for a flag. And in ChromeEngine, we don't really want to use actual cylinders. We want to use these things called pen lines because they approximate cylinders, but they're much faster to use. So game objects start create 3D line. Actually put it before this one, and that takes 2 points, start and end point, a radius, and a name. So we call this one flagpole, call this one flag fabric. Radius will make this one really thin, and then it's up to the points. So what points are we going to use? Well, it's on the end one, kind of right in the middle, so we can just copy these ones for it. So our starting point is going to be this 5.2 negative 23. Put that in the wrong slot. 0, 5.2 negative 23 seems good. And let's just kind of copy those again. Let's copy this one, but now we'll make it kind of 1.2 units high, so 6.4 is our next one. That's good, that's good. And for this one, so now how do we make a quad? Well, we're going to basically define this point, then that point, then that one, then that one. So we'll put in 1 point. We know 1 point, which is going to be the top of it. So then it's I don't know, 0, 6.1. So we'll make it 0.3 units high. So then it's the same, negative 23. In fact, negative 23, we're going to have it be, well, so this looks like it's on the z-axis. We'll actually have it on the x-axis so the player can see it right from the start. Which means that all of these are going to be negative 23. Well, since it's on the x-axis, let's make it negative 0.5 on the x-axis. Negative 0.5, negative 0.5, and then this one's going to be 6.4, and this one's going to be 6.1. No material for now, and let's see, did I do that right? Yeah, looks good. You'll notice that you can't see it if you look from this side, and we're going to fix that in the next step. So here we go, that's the geometry of the scene, it's complete. Let's make it colorful. So moving over to here, this is the adding materials section now. So we need to add materials, and we do that with materials.new material. And that just can make either a material with a color, or can make a material with a texture, depending on whether we set this one or this one. And you also need a label so that we can later assign that material to game objects. So let's make our starting one. So yellow. Cool. We got yellow, and now, so color. How do we do colors? Well, it's an RGBA, but you don't need to set A because ChromeEngine will just assume A, which is alpha, will be 1 if you don't put it, and it's fastest not put it. But I recommend you just look up color picker on Google. When you get this thing, we can pick colors. It's quite nice. So if I want a nice yellow, and I kind of like a pastely yellow, I don't like using full yellow, it's too bright. Here we go. And then you can just copy this RGB value, stick it in. The moment it shouldn't have spaces, we'll break it, but I think we'll change that in the future. And that will make a yellow material. Let's make the others. So we'll have blue for the intermediate, green for the end, red for the enemies. Let's make some colors for those. Blue. Nice. Where's blue? Here we go. Green. Kind of like a brightish green. Keep doing that. Green. And then red. It's going to have a very bright red. Yeah, so 255.00. Nice. And we put these materials right at the start because it's just clearer that way. And then what? Well, now we need to assign these materials. So assign the start to be yellow. And just to assign materials, we need to write in the label which we created in the material slot for when we're creating the game object. So yellow for the start, platform 2 is going to be blue. In fact, the next 5 ones are blue. End is going to be green. The spike is going to be red. The enemy is also going to be red. The 3D point we need to do separately. Same for the flag fabric, but we can do the flag pole by just picking a nice color which makes it stand out, so yellow. Now, if we click starting point, there it goes, nice and colorful. Good. Okay, so let's fix the fact that this goes invisible. And the way we do that is we'll create a new material, especially for the flag fabric. We'll give it the same color as green, but we'll call it flag. And then we can use a thing called materials.set double-sided. And put in a list of materials, but we'll just put in one, flag. Now when we start it, hopefully that should be double-sided. Oh, I didn't assign it. Okay, so we've got to make sure to always assign the material. Okay, and there we go, it's green, and there we go, double-sided. So the last thing is this eye. That's what we're going to do. If you go to the tutorial, scroll down, you get this eye, looks nice. You can save that image, then go to render. Renders anything that you want to, any textures, any kind of stamped images. You need to go to render costumes. See, lots of costumes for ChromeEngine, but then we'll put in an eye, and let's just remember the name. It's going to be eye. So when we go to setup, go back to code, all we have to do is make another material. So material start new material for eye, label it eye, and then for here, instead of color, so all the others are color, but this time you want an image, so we go to texture costume name, and it needs to be the name of the costume in render, so eye. We'll assign it, this time I'm remembering that, here, eye, and let's see, did that work? Yeah, okay, so that's all the materials, nice. So we can move on to the next section, which is the player. Let's go quickly through this. We have a player. It's this object. If you don't have this, let's just see what would happen if I didn't have that. You can't play the game. You can still move around, but you can't play it. So you need a player. What else? In logic, this thing lets you control it. So if I did this, I've got it. But if I remove the player controller, now I also can't move. So you want to make sure you have controllers.player controller and play logic. The play logic lets you change some settings for how the player works. So you've got speed, jump height, and then glide or walk. So if I just make the speed really high, so I can do this while playing. Look how fast I'm going. I make you jump really high. Nice. Really small. And then glide walk mode is currently we're walking. But if I glide, there we go. Look at that. So I move around like a physics object. But this is better for platformer. Alright, and let me reset this. Cool. So then what I'd like to do is add sound effects. If we go to logic, you can see what sound effects come with ChromeEngine. We've got concrete step, grass step, which is defined by 4 sounds in here. Concrete step is pretty good for platforms, so we'll just assign that. The way you do that is you go to here and you just put in concrete step. Make sure it's the same as the sound effect. It has to be with the same capitalization or it's not going to work. We only need it for the first ones. Just an aside, you could also do set SFX, but it's just quicker to do it here. So let's play that. We need to start again. It's hard to hear, but there you go. There are sound effects. Moving on, let's make things move. So what did we want? We wanted 2 moving platforms and a moving enemy. So to do that, we go to the logic sprite now, and we've got a number of different blocks here. So we've got GameObjects.setup, which is useful for setting things up after setup, but we don't need that, so I'll just move over here. Edit logic, which is the logic which occurs when we're in edit mode, but we don't care about that. Play logic, the logic when we're in play mode, which we normally care about, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we're just going to use play and edit logic. We also don't care about this, so I'll move it to the side. Play and edit logic. Let's make some things move. So first I'll turn into edit mode, and then we're going to make this one move back and forth. We're going to make this one spin, and we're going to make the enemy move kind of just around, but constrained to its little platform. To make something move in ChromeEngine, use GameObjects.setPosition. Here we go. Put the name of an object, which is in this case going to be platform 3. Then you can give it a position. If you leave something blank, it won't change that. In this case, we don't want to change the X position, we just want to change the Y and the Z. Here's how we're going to do that. We're going to take advantage of the fact that if we use sinusoidal movement, or sine and cosine, so it's kind of this oscillating movement, and oscillating movement is very useful for making our platforms move back and forth. So we can just essentially, we take the starting points for our platforms, and they started off at 3.6 and negative 5.2, 3.6 and negative 5.2. We'll put in this sine. We'll use cosine for the y, we'll use sine for the z, and then we can just put in the timer multiplied by some amount. So the timer is just this time which is going to increase, and the amount we want to multiply it by depends on how often we want it to repeat. So the moment, if you just use timer, then since cosine and sine have a range of 360, this would repeat every 360 seconds or 6 minutes, which is way too slow. We want it to kind of go, we want it to go really slowly, so we'll just do 50, which means it repeats roughly every 6 seconds. That's good. We also want it to just be moving slightly more, so we'll multiply this one by 1.8, we'll multiply this one by negative 1.4. We could have also used 1.4, but I want it to move in a reverse direction to this one, just so it's a little more varied. Put that in, and then there we go. So our platform now moves kind of on this elliptical motion, which is nice. And now our player can jump from this one to that one to that one. So let's do this spinning platform now. So we do that with GameObjects.set rotation, and we pick platform 5, and then we have your pitch and roll. So if I just go over to, where's it? This is a helpful diagram. Pitch, yaw, and roll. Your pitch, roll. Yaw is on the y-axis, pitch is on the x-axis, and roll is on the z-axis. So if we want to have a spinning platform that spins here, that is the y-axis, which is yaw. So that's basically the first one. So that's all we want to change. We'll do that again with sine motion. We'll do the timer once again, but we'll multiply it by 30, then multiply by 90. So that means it will turn kind of halfway and then back. Let's try that. Okay, and put it in. There we go, looks good. So that's some nice movement. The right speed. Okay, now we've got the enemy. So how do we do that? If you were in regular Scratch, you'd have move, and you'd have point towards. You'd have point towards and move, and you could make something move towards the player, because that's what we want. We want the enemy to move towards the player. So you'd normally just point it towards the player, then you'd move 10 steps. And we've tried to kind of recreate that in ChromeEngine. So you have GameObjects dot point towards a position. In this case, we take the enemy position. We'll take, in ChromeEngine there's these 3 special variables. They're called, let's see if I can find them, player X, player Y, player Z, and they store the current location of the player. Or if you're in edit mode, the camera's location is what these player variables will represent, which is really useful for testing in edit mode. It's the reason I'm using GameObjects to point towards position instead of point towards object. So we can put these in. If we just put in X, Y, Z, good, right? What would happen? Let's see. Cool. We kind of move around. It's pointing towards me in all directions. All right. But I don't really want him to have full range movement, so I'm just going to remove the Y. Okay, so now he doesn't move on the Y, which is all right. Let's fix, he's kind of tilting down now, so we can fix that with set rotation on the enemy. Okay, so this is important. Never make this mistake. Never start typing things while it's attached to the logic and you're playing, or the game will break. You need to do your logic here and then move it in. Okay, let's try that again. Rotation, your pitch roll. Well, it's pitch that is the problem, so we'll put 0, stick it in. There we go, nice. Let's make it move, but let's specifically make it move if we're inside this space, because if we just do GameObjects.move, okay, I almost made that mistake. Enemy, something like 0.04, since we're calling this every frame. Okay, so now he moves towards us kind of infinitely, which is an issue. Alright, also, did you see that? Like, that was sorted wrong. The reason it was sorted wrong, can't see if I can reproduce it. I can't. But the reason it was sorted wrong is because there's a step that I missed. You need to go to Setup, scroll down, and you must put this. You must put GameObjects.setDynamic for all the moving ones, or the sorting's not going to work. So that's enemy platform 3 and platform 5, and that will make the sorting work. Let's go back and let's continue what we were doing. He's still moving towards us kind of infinitely. We really just want him to move as long as the player is within this box. So how do we do that? Well, the code for that is a little more complex. So first we take the player's location, which is player X. We subtract the center point of the platform, which is 0 if you remember. Then to turn that into absolute, we just use that. And then we're looking for if it's less than the width of the platform, which, or like half the width, which is 1.25. So there you go. We do the same thing for the Y. Except, no, not for the Y, the Z. Except the Z was -20, and half the depth of this platform is 1.5. Okay, now we just say and both of these, and now we've constrained it so that this condition only applies if we're within this rectangle. This is how you check if something's within a rectangle. Put that in. We can just move this one within this one. So start it again. And hopefully, only if we're within it does it move. Yes, there we go. Okay, so now we can move on to the last part of the tutorial, which is interactive game elements. Because at the moment, if we touch the spikes, touch the ground, touch the enemy, or all of this flag, nothing happens. And we want to basically make the player die if they touch the spikes or the enemy. We want to make them die if they touch the ground. And we want to make them win if they touch this end platform. So I'm going to introduce two things to make that possible. Looking for interactions. The search is not working, so I'll just get it here. So we've got check interactions between objects. We've got interactions player is touching. Yeah, so those are the two ones. So this lets us check if an object's touching another object, or if it's closer than a certain distance. And this one lets us check if the player is touching an object. So in our case, we want this one. And this does two things. So there's a variable called touching, if we can get it. Okay, here, touching. And there's also a list called interactions. Here. So if the player touches whatever object has this name, it will set this variable to true, and it will also add whatever label you put in here to interactions. We're going to use the fact that it adds the label to interactions now to basically check lots of interactions at the same time. So we'll check for spike 1, spike 2, and enemy, and we'll just add this kind of label hazard. Hazard. Move that over to here. Unfortunately, we can't test this in edit mode. We can only test it in play mode. But I'll show it in a second. Okay, so then we can just check if the list interactions contains our label hazard. We'll also check if the player is touching the ground, which we'll do in a more simple way by just saying if their y coordinate is less than the ground y, plus some amount, 0.5. Then we're going to kill a player. And how we're going to kill a player, we'll just set their coordinate back to where, we'll just reset them. So it's 1, 0, and this is at player Y, at player Z. Cool, and we want to play a sound, so we can get a sound here, the deaf sound. We can also get a wind sound. So download both of those. Then you go to sounds and just kind of stick them in so that we can use them. Okay. So then we'll just start a sound. It's important you use start sound, not play sound, so it doesn't lag things. And then let's try that. Nice, and if I go up to the spikes, so we're going to look for, see if hazard appears in interactions and see if it kills the player. Alright, and nice, so we die. Let's hide these for now. What next? Well, we want to win. We want the... What happens if we touch the end platform? Well, so we could also just use the same if interactions contains, but for simplicity we can use this touching thing if we've just got one thing. So we can directly check if touching equals 1. We can do this, touching equals 1. Then, if that happens, let's make a variable to hold that we have won the game. Has 1. So we'll set has 1 to 1. And then importantly, we only want to be able to win the game if has 1 is 0, because otherwise we'll just infinitely win the game. So that's not helpful. Has 1 equals 0. So it has 1 to 1, and that's good. And then we can start that sound we downloaded a second ago. It's cool. So I'm not going to play the whole game to test it. I'm just going to set it so we're over the win position. Where's the win? It's over here. 5.2 negative 23. So let's do 6 negative 23. Let's try that. Nice. Okay, so we've got a little win sound. Let's also make it so that there's a little win screen. So if has 1 equals 1, then let's switch the costume to, and let's see what costumes we have. So ChromeEngine actually comes with a win screen by default in the blank project, just to make this platformer tutorial a bit easier. Nice, you won. So we can just show that win screen, and then what you want to do in GUI is stamp it. You always want to stamp it. And if we do that, there we go, it's good. Just to make sure it works with other things, I recommend you also set the goto to be 0, and you set the size to be 100%. So we try again. There we go. So you get this U1, and that's pretty good. So let's see. And also I can now try the enemy. I should die. There we go. Nice. Let's set the player back to the start, which is here 0, 1, 0. Okay, I'm realizing now I made one mistake. We need to actually have we're starting in has 1. So when green flag's clicked, let's just set has 1 to 0, so that we don't start by having won the game. Okay, so that's our game, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you have fun making many wonderful ChromeEngine 3D projects. That's all for today. Keep on scratching.